Welcome to the Ranchonomics Podcast, where we empower you to build a better ranch and transform your operations into a thriving business. I'm your host, John Haskell. Let's get started. Tyler, welcome to the Ranchonomics Podcast. Great to have you here.
Great. Thanks for inviting me.
You bet. Today I have got Tyler Dawley with me from Northern California. Tyler Dawley is a big chicken grower who grows a lot of, not only does he grow a lot of chickens, those chickens are big, but he has been in the chicken business for a while. His family has been around the HRM and what we now call regenerative movement for quite a long time. And Tyler, if you'd give us a little background on Big Bluff Ranch, I'd appreciate it.
Sure. So Grandpa bought the ranch in 1960 as kind of a weekend getaway. He was one of those annoying city people. Good guy, but city people like that. And, oh geez, poor Grandpa, rolling in his grave. Then in the early 80s, the ranch had to become more self-sufficient, and that left my dad kind of in charge. He grew up in Santa Barbara, much more of a sailor than a cowboy. And so he was like, oh, crap. Obviously, he married my mom, who was, family to the ranch. And he was like, oh, crap, I'm in charge of this place. How does this make money? I'm a sailor. I don't know, So he ended up going to one of Alan Savory's very first seminars in the early 80s, and he was sold hook, line, and sinker. So we have been badly practicing holistic management ever since.
I love it.
We would never hold ourselves up as an example, but it has very much guided us for these past 40 odd years. And so that led us down the path of, at the time we were a cow-calf operation. The ranch is, for our country, about half size it needs to be commercially easy.
And describe where you're at in detail.
We are in Northern California, the real Northern California. So we're 2 hours north of Sacramento on I-5 in the foothills of the coastal range. We border up into the Olabole National Forest. So that means we are oak, woodland, savanna down here, kind of at the front half of the ranch, trending towards steep hills. And we sneak back up into the Chaparral Belt, which is the vast majority of the big fires you hear in California are up in the Chaparral Belt. Yeah, so 4 hours away from the Bay Area where all of the people buy expensive meat.
Good. And you guys are Mediterranean climate, so you get winter rain and summer hot and dry, right?
That's right. Yep. So it's kind of been a paradigm breaker, slow paradigm shift for me as I keep thinking, we're so dry. We don't ever get that much rain. But actually, our average rainfall is 30 inches, but we get it over, maybe 10 weeks.
God, it was that high.
Yeah, exactly. It's like, oh man, we're so dry. And it's like, then I keep hearing about people with 10 inches and 6 inches and 15. So I'm like, okay, I got to change my internal story that our problems are not a lack of rain. We get enough water. So now it's just bad management, but we're getting there.
So today at your house, we're recording this in November. You've gotten how much rain this week?
Yeah, so over the past 7 days, we're probably over 9.5 inches. So that's pretty unusual, both the size of the storm and the timing of the storm. So we've almost got a third of our yearly rainfall in a week, which is a lot of rain. Luckily, it was our first big storm of the year, so it all mostly soaked in. So our runoff was pretty minimal, but still a lot of stinking rain.
So how did you get into chickens?
All right. So basically, one of us read Joel Salatin. That was essentially the beginning of it. So right around 2000, grass-fed beef was becoming a thing. I graduated from college, had to figure out how to pay for myself here at the ranch. My mom was like, don't do it. Don't come back. And of course, here I am still. And so we did grass-fed beef at farmers markets. Then we did lamb. Then we did goat. And then we tried a little bit of chicken and said we hated it. Tried pork, realized there's something worse to raise than chickens. We went back into chickens. And so that was essentially it. We were trying to serve a niche in our local farmers markets by being the only operation in our neck of the woods dumb enough to grow chicken. And we're like, hey, we're pretty darn dumb. We can go that route. And so that was 2006-ish, 7-ish, somewhere in that range. 2008-ish, I went to a conference, met a guy who could sell more chickens than he could raise. We could raise more chickens than we could sell. And that's when we switched from being a mostly direct marketing operation to more of a wholesale contract grower. And that's pretty much the arena we've played in for the past, whatever number of years that is. Too many, really. So as of this year, we're going to do about 45,000 chickens. We did 600 turkeys, and we're selling to, I call them baby butcher boxes. So basically online retailers, and we sell in bulk. So, I try and sell pallets of chicken, not heads of chicken.
Tell me about the marketing of that. So when you say you're selling to mini butcher boxes, you mean your primary customer you're selling to retailers?
Right. Yeah. We don't sell very much directly to the end consumer. We sell to someone who sells to the end consumer. So we are in this weird little area where we are both setting our price, but we're also constrained by the market. So we charge as much as we absolutely can. But the reality is that the market for expensive chicken is only so big.
Yeah.
And so this is just lots of cold calling, lots of Google searching and being like, hey, you're smart enough to sell grass-fed beef. You're smart enough not to grow chicken, but you probably want to sell chicken. And I can grow chicken, so you can sell it. And so that's what we do. So we white label, we co-brand, we do all sorts of things. But basically, I try and sell a lot of chicken to someone else and let them deal with the headaches of fulfillment.
Love it. Okay, very good. So let's talk a little about the world of chickens. You have some great thoughts on these things, and I'd like to start with sort of marketing of chickens. So if I am a direct consumer producer, or I'm an aspiring farmer and I want to get into the chicken business, your advice, I think, is to start thinking about what your market is for your product.
Right.
So give me some rundown there. Tell me what you think.
So I've been doing this for a while. I've watched plenty of operations start. I've watched just about all of them fail. And what happens is that we are all producers at heart. So we all start off with, how do I raise the chickens? What size chicken tractor? Do I do free range? Do I do organic? All these technical details, but that in the chicken world, there are what I would say 3 main questions that you need to have a handle on before you even possibly think about buying a bird and growing it out. And the first one of them is definitely, who are you going to sell them to? Who's your market? For pretty much anyone, if you're growing pork, you're growing lamb, you're growing goat, you're growing beef, you will be able to find an auction yard and just drop them off and walk away. It's a bad idea. I'm done. I'm out of it, but at least I can sell these animals for at least something. That does not really exist in the chicken world.
For chickens, you can't just dump them off and...
No. I went to the largest live action animal auction yard I could find here in Northern California. I took 200 head, and the total of everything else that was being sold was less than 200 head of chicken. And so I was like, looks like the market says I can get $3-4 a head. Will you bring double the volume of the entire market? And then, you only get $1 or $2 a head, which, at least you don't have to kill them, but you might as well. So anyways, the reality is that if you want to do chickens, you are going to have to sell them. You don't get to take them to an auction yard. You don't get to sell them. Maybe you get to sell them to a broker, but basically not. Once you buy that chick, you are stuck with it all the way until it is converted to a package of meat. And even then, you still have to sell that package of meat.
And if you're running chickens at scale, you're not running 30 or 40 chickens. You're always doing that in multiples of hundreds, right?
Well, at least hundreds. So I know, I've been doing deep dives on trying to figure out sell-by marketing. So I know everyone wants to sell truckloads. So that's what, 40-ish, 45,000-ish pounds of beef, live animals?
Yeah.
Somewhere in that range. Well, if you convert that over to chickens, you're talking a semi-load of chickens is in the 6,000 range, 7,000 range. And just as in the beef world, basically you want to ship as many as you possibly can at one time. So, 6,000 head is really kind of the unit you want to be approaching. I'm not there yet.
And when you're selling chicken retail, you're selling them 1, maybe 2 at a time, right?
Right.
Nothing to 3,000 customers who all pay on time.
Yep. Chicken is a volume game, even more than Beef is pounds, chicken is head. You have to sell lots and lots of head of chicken.
And there's no intermediary to help.
Nope. It is all on you. And I mean, so there's a blessing and a curse there, right? I mean, you're setting your price, you're finding your market. No one's going to really kind of undercut you by a penny here or a penny there. That, this is going to be a relationship that you're going to own for years. But on the other hand, the deal cycle on setting up these contracts is years. So our biggest buyer right now is buying really a lot of chicken. It's amazing. But I talked to them maybe 5 years ago for the first time. I talked to them off and on for 3.5 years. They finally bought chicken like 4 years, 3.5, 4 years after the first time I talked to them.
Oh, man. Okay.
So, it's going to take a while to develop markets. And if you want to do it, it's great. It's there, but it's all the stuff you probably don't want to do. It's the cold calling. It's the, nope, you're too expensive. Nope. Call me next month. Call me next year. Nope. And, it's just, there's going to be a lot of no's. And then you can't just say screw it and take them to the auction yard and walk away. It would be very nice to be able to do that sometimes.
Yeah, I'll bet. I talk to a lot of people who struggle to fully implement the new wonderful things they learned from continuing education. You take ranching for profit, you go to a stockmanship class, or you take a marketing course, and you come home and you struggle to fully implement what you now know. Often the barrier isn't what you know, it's your own mind. Bud Williams used to tell us to get our mind right constantly. We know a lot of the right things, but implementing them often requires a new mindset. Fred Provenza describes conquering your own mind as the longest 6 inches, the distance between your ears. Sometimes you need to unlearn a few things you think you know. In the Zone Rancher course offered through ranching.fyi, Bob Palmer teaches us how to have an elite level mindset. Bob has spent his career working with Olympic level athletes, the military and business people, teaching them how to work in the mental zone where they are most effective. We've all experienced the feeling of choking. Many of us know that we don't perform at our best under pressure. Many of us have also experienced the zone as a fleeting moment of brilliance when we perform at our best. Bob helps prepare us mentally for those high-stress situations where the consequences are dire and/or the stakes are high. He teaches us how to practice correctly to get our mind right. He has developed tools that allow us to consistently perform at our best in the moments when we need it the most. Life in the zone is better. It's better for your business. It's better for your family. Join the next round of Zone Rancher through www.ranching.fyi and lead yourself and those around you to a whole new level. Okay. So tell me a quick story about having a lot of chickens to sell and finding yourself at the auction barn. What preceded all of that? Because having 200 chickens at the auction barn and realizing they only sell 200 a day is a bit of a rough deal. You had a lot more than that, right?
Oh, yeah. No, that was the first load I was planning to bring. So what happened was that the way we set up our contracts is that theoretically that the buyer commits to buying any chick that we put on the ground for them, that I am not growing these on speculation, that every single chick is sold before I buy it in the first place. But people can walk out of contracts, they can go back on their word, and this guy did that. So he was like, nope, I am now out of business. He was a tech guy, thought he knew how to market and do this, do that, and took his money from he thought his success in tech was going to make him successful in the meat industry, which is really, they don't sync up very well. And so he was like, nope, I'm done. You can just have all those birds. And I'm like, I don't want them. Take them. The contract says you own them and you have to deal with them. And he's like, no, I'm not going to do that. They're yours. That was pretty much it. So we had, about 900 head of these slow growing genetic broilers out there. And we couldn't sell them to anyone else because they were very specific to what he wanted. They were not great meat birds, or at least they didn't fit the normal spec. And so we was like, oh my God. So we took him to that largest live auction yard where it's like 200 head a week, and we brought 200, and that didn't work. We had to find, I don't know quite what you'd call them, but many of these minority ethnicities will have like a dude who kind of buys animals and then sells them retail. So we ended up finding a couple of these guys in the Asian world. There's one in the Indian world, and they would take, 100 at a time or 50 at a time. And you're like, holy crap, I'm spending like so much money on feed, but I can't sell them any faster. And so we had the extra 900 extra birds that we were basically getting pennies on the dollar for, and we had to feed them for probably another 2 months.
Right.
So
how long can you store a chicken after a chicken is finished? Like, how long can you keep feeding them before they go backwards?
Oh, never really had to do it. You could. I mean, here's a secret. Everything you ever need to know about raising a meat bird and a layer is on the internet. Avagen, all the big breeders, Cobb Acre, Ross, all of their broiler manuals are on the internet. And so everything you possibly want to know, how much light, how much heat, what sort of size feed particles, how big is your crumble supposed to be? It's all there. And so all of the feed rations are there too. So you just tweak your rations. So as they get closer to finishing, if you want a higher energy, a lower protein, I don't exactly know what you do. You can tweak your rations and hold them where you need to be. But in the chicken world, you're not too concerned with marbling or finish. I mean, you should be, but everyone wants a lean chicken. So if you get fat on them, it's almost problematic. So you just are more worried about the average carcass size than you are the finish of that bird.
Okay. Yeah, that's interesting. And then how much, if you have, let's say, 100 chickens that you've processed, how much freezer space do they take up?
100 chickens, whoever deals with such small numbers, 100 chickens is going to be 10 cases. You're probably looking at full-size chest freezer.
Okay. That's a lot of space. So if you've got 900, you don't just stuff them in the freezer without.
Nah. Well, no, because processing them, we'll probably end up talking about processing later. My processing cost is like $6 a head. So if I just want to feed them to myself, if I had 900 of them at $6 a head, that's $5,400 of just processing. If it had gotten to that point, we probably would have just let the coyotes come and help themselves. It would have been cheaper.
Yeah. Interesting. Okay, so let's talk about processing. We've talked about marketing. What are the concerns? We see a lot of things in the world of direct to consumer where processing can be a difficult piece of the operation. How does it work in the world of chickens?
Worse. Okay, so question one is who's going to buy it, and that the part of the answer has to be you are selling chicken meat. You're not selling live chicken. So that means that you have to start looking into question two, which is processing. So everyone probably knows that it's pretty hard to find a custom processor for beef, for four-legged red meat. It's not undoable, but it's not easy.
Right. Like looking for a good one who you can work with over a long period of time. Yes.
Right. And, there are issues there, but you can do it. Eventually, you'll be able to do it. The world of custom chicken processing is much, much smaller.
Yeah.
Well, let me take a small step back here. So if you realize that you have to sell chicken meat, not live chickens, you have two grand options, two overarching options. You can go through USDA inspection, custom processing, or you can do on-farm processing. There is a USDA exemption, PL 4092, something. That's Google would probably answer the correct number. And what that says is the USDA kicks it down to the state, and they say under 20,000 birds a year, every state can decide on its own what level of inspection it cares about. Some states say, great, do 20,000 however you want. We don't care. Some say, no, you have to be USDA. Every state's different, but every state does have some option for on-farm processing that is much less regulated than USDA. But it is less regulated. It is also less useful. For the most part, you have to sell it in-state. You have to sell it direct to the consumer. You can't sell it wholesale. I don't know. Every state's different, so I can't say for a fact. But everything that I've ever heard seems to indicate that on-farm processing limits your options basically to selling to consumers, which is fine. That's fine. You can make a business there, but you're limited to 20,000, and 20,000 birds a year sounds like a lot. It's not nothing, but that's not really that much chicken, really.
It's a lot if they're not sold and you have to dispose of them, but
Right. And it is a lot if you're direct marketing every single one of those. It is a lot. I mean, it's all a little bit of a perspective situation when you say 20,000. I think of 20,000 as kind of like, not a lot, but I'm selling wholesale. I am not getting huge chunks of margin per bird. Someone else has to get their chunk out of it. So another thing, if you've never processed a chicken, is it is a full-time, well, it's a skill. It's like any other butchers. You interviewed your butcher buddy a while back. It's a full-time skill. Like there are tricks and tips to the trade, like how hot your scald water should be, how long you should scald them, how long you should pluck them, the most efficient way to gut them. There's all these little tricks. And that it's also, so it's both skilled and it's also sporadic, that you'll probably process once a week, once a month, once a year, once a season, that you're not going to be processing every single day of the week. And when you do process, though, it's kind of like branding. You're going to need a ton of help, like for one day out of the year. And that, branding's kind of fun, right? You can get people to come. Processing chickens, it doesn't really qualify as fun. Maybe satisfying at the end of the day because you've done a lot of work. You can see what you've done, but fun, it's a bit much. There's no horses. There's no roping. It's just,
smell.
Yeah, wet feathers, wet chicken poop, and even things. Yeah. So on-farm processing is absolutely a viable option. There are plenty of outfits who are doing on-farm processing and doing very well at it. I would just say that if you have any desire for scale or ease of life, you probably want to move into bucket number 2, which is USDA processing.
Okay.
And I don't know if I quite remember if I got all the way into it, but basically they don't really exist. In all of California, there's about 3 custom processors available. There might be one in Oregon. I don't think there's any in Nevada. I've had to look. Washington, I think there's one in Washington. So I'm 12 hours away from Washington, probably even longer on a truck. So, it's not even a realistic option for me.
Yeah.
You're a rancher where you grow the chickens, you need to draw like a 6-hour circle, and you need a USDA processing plant within that 6-hour circle. And you probably should be closer to like 4.
Okay.
So there's just not many options out there. And they don't advertise, they're just like a big custom beef guy. They're like, we got as much business as we ever want. Like, we don't actually want you to find us.
Right. For the record, Kathy Voth runs a project called On Pasture, which is kind of an online library of resources. And it's at onpasture.com. And if you search on her website, she has a list of USDA processing plants around the country. The list is, I want to say they're like, looked at it before, they're like 20, maybe 30 total. It's not very many. And as you can imagine, they're concentrated in the Midwest, places like Arkansas, Missouri, Illinois, Indiana, Kentucky, Kansas. But there are a few scattered throughout. There is not, I don't see anything in the Mountain West. There is one in Idaho. I guess that would qualify as Mountain West. But Utah, Colorado, Wyoming, Nebraska, South Dakota, North Dakota, I don't see any of those states on that list. So you're saying 4 to 6 hours is your reasonable transport distance.
Yep.
Okay. All right, Tyler, we're going to take a break here. We're going to come back next week and talk about a couple other things. I've got some questions on chicken logistics. And then I also want people to know that you are the moderator of the Direct Consumer Forum on the ranching.fyi forums. And that our intent is to have a few webinars there that really get into the nitty gritty of things we've talked about today, plus things we're going to talk about next week. And people can find those forums at ranching.fyi. Is there any place, you have a website, right, for Big Bluff Ranch?
Yep. Yeah, that's it. BigBluffRanch.com. Come on by.
You're on Facebook and Instagram and all that, I presume?
Technically we are, but I post about once every 3 years. So go ahead, find me and I'll see you in 3 years.
And you enter an annual beard growing contest on TikTok, I presume, and
No, this beard's been here for 20 years.
I love it. Good. All right. We'll take a break. We're going to come back next week and get more into the chicken thing. Tyler, thank you very much for joining me today, and I look forward to seeing you in a bit. Thank you for tuning into the Ranchnomics podcast. We hope this episode helped you win today. If you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe and share it with a friend.